Hello and welcome to another edition of Sports Talk Philadelphia. I'm your host, Tommy McIntyre Jr., and we have a great one for you today. Steve Graham got to interview Ray Netchie, a LaSalle alum, who actually is a daytime ESPN programmer for its radio station, and guess what? He's got this, and we're coming to that as well as talking a little Philly sports, Eagles draft coverage, as well as the Philadelphia Phillies. Stay tuned.
7, 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1.
You'll never have the sacred stone.
Oh, this you crazy mother.
And welcome back. Well, Steve Graham got to interview a LaSalle alum here in this studio a little earlier this week. Ray Netchie is a day programmer for ESPN Radio. So let's send it off to Steve right now.
Tell us a little bit about your process of getting to where, your journey of getting to where you are today.
Sure. So as you do in college, when I was here, I'd go home in summers and stuff. I'd do some internships. For me, it was at the time a little more music focused, so I was getting into radio that way. Back home, it's kind of interesting. The first time I went home, I think it was after my junior year, they were a top 40 station. And then I started to do some stuff with them during breaks and whatever, and by the time I went back, the top 40 station had also bought Modern Rock station. And then by the time I came back, like a third time, it was part of a full cluster. And that's kind of the way the business was going. So I was basically doing promotions, working with the morning shows, talk shows, kind of anything you can kind of do to get the experience going. And one of those stations in that cluster ended up becoming an ESPN radio affiliate. So I got to meet some people from the network as they were launching everything and getting the process going. And so probably after about 2 years or so of local radio, someone over at the network asked if I was interested in applying for a job with the ESPN radio group. So.
Connections are nice.
And it's huge in this business.
Yeah.
I mean, for as much as you need the education and you need to build up the experience in the resume,
Sure.
It's the relationships you make definitely kind of lead you from one place to the next.
Absolutely. And when you came to LaSalle and by the time you graduated, did you know radio was your niche, or were you interested in TV or film? Or?
I knew I wanted to do something in the business. Like I said, I had a big interest in music. I was trying to do some work in recording studios, so it was actually one of the internships I did that was set up through LaSalle University with Sigma Sound Studios in Philadelphia. So I wasn't really sure. One of the things that was nice about being here was I could work for WEXP and get some radio experience. I could do some stuff upstairs with the TV studio and kind of learn a lot of that equipment. So I had an idea of the area I wanted to be in, but I wasn't locked into radio until I started doing, like I said, some more internships and stuff like that.
And definitely one of the biggest programs you're working with, of course, is Mike and Mike on ESPN Radio. Can you tell us a little bit about what it's like working with them?
Yeah, I mean, that show, it's amazing to see where it is now and kind of where it started. It really started right about the time I got to ESPN, so about 18 and a half, almost 19 years ago, and they had, I believe, one real affiliate at the time. And since then, obviously, over the time, they've not only added over 400 affiliates, they're simulcast on TV, and that even started on an ESPN News broadcast with maybe an eighth of the staff they have now on the TV side. So now they're on ESPN2, and it's a real, I think where you see a lot of shows kind of going now, it's more of a multi-platform approach. You always want to be fair to the radio affiliates, and that's your core, and that's probably almost evenly half our audience. But there's TV elements, and you're worrying about how everything looks at the same time as how everything sounds, and are you kind of, if you do a funny bit in studio, whether it's, you know, we've had Mike Golick eat hot peppers, or we've pied people on the staff and whatever, you need to make sure that you're paying that off for a radio audience. That's obviously a very visual gag. On the same kind of flip side of that, you know, for the TV group, they want to have things that look a certain way because they're used to having a polished kind of look. And one of the adjustments we made when we had to relaunch our studio a year ago is they didn't want the big, bulky radio mics in front of your face because it's literally blocking you as you're trying to talk. Right. So we tried to make an adjustment and use lav mics like you and I are wearing now. It wasn't the greatest audio quality that we could possibly have, so we ended up switching back. So it's always kind of a back and forth with that show where you're trying to kind of pay off for everyone. So it's been a neat experience, and at the core of it, obviously, is Mike Greenberg and Mike Golick, and it's interesting to see them kind of go from, obviously, professionals, but guys who were never expecting to be at the level they're at now, and seeing how that's grown, and recently did shows in Philadelphia, and you get hundreds of people lining up at 4 a.m. to show up for a 6 a.m. show. It's been pretty overwhelming.
What is, I guess, the most memorable show that you can think of, the most rewarding, or can you pinpoint one show?
It's just trying to appreciate the whole experience, and I do think it's hard to pinpoint, one moment. Especially, I've been with ESPN now, like I said, 19 years, so we've dealt with everything from extremely joyous occasions to like real hard new stuff, like trying to figure out, Mike and I wasn't with the show then, but they were on the air during 9/11. We ended up shortly after their show switching to news programming for 24 hours as we tried to adjust and figure out, like, how do you handle this? How do you talk about it? So it's that weird spectrum where you've kind of covered all kinds of different levels, and it's hard to kind of say anything is more, obviously not fun, but, and to appreciate one moment over the other, there's just like, you could list a dozen and you wouldn't even skim the surface,
Can you remember, you mentioned a little bit that you worked for WEXP and LaSalle TV here. Can you remember any specific shows that you put some time in?
Well, the WEXP at the time, especially, you got kind of hours that were blocked out, and you could kind of do whatever you wanted. Sure. So we had a lot of fun on that, because you could literally play music that you wanted to hear, or you could do like a sports talk show, and had a lot of freedom, which was good, because most of it was failing. But when you do this, you have to fail, and you need to learn. Right. So that's a great place to do it. The TV studio, it's funny now seeing like how well it's put together now, and they have the different shows and all that. A lot of that stuff was just starting to kind of be developed when I was here. So I was more willing to kind of help out with working in the control room or working a camera or kind of doing something like that, but I wasn't necessarily ever trying to host a show or anything like that. So
that early experience, though, a lot of these radio stations, and especially the bigger networks, they're turning radio stations into TV shows as well. What is that like, combining those two platforms? Yeah,
when I first joined Mike and Mike, that was actually my focus, was to kind of help both sides work together. And like I was saying earlier, it's a type of thing, it's a constant balance, and everyone feels like they're not necessarily getting everything that they need, whether it's the radio side or the TV side. You're trying to make everyone happy, which almost makes no one happy. But I think ESPN's always had an approach, like, we want to be wherever the sports fan is. Sure. And you want to get anywhere that they are. So whether you see the push to be on radio, whether you see those radio shows giving them live, fresh content, which sometimes that's all they're looking for, not having to replay another show. They want to just have something that can respond to the news. Or even now what's going on with all the mobile apps, and more of what we do than is on a TV channel is available on the phone with the app. And ESPN is the ESPN3 and all that kind of stuff. There are a lot of games, basketball games, even some LaSalle games, I'll watch on the app. Which may not be on my local cable provider, So that's kind of where everything's heading, and there's been a lot of shift in the industry, and it's hard to believe that, when I was at LaSalle, I didn't have a cell phone. And now I don't know what I would do without my phone.
Right. Really, to wrap this up, is there one thing that can serve as advice to others that you wish you knew coming out of LaSalle, going into the work industry?
Take your time, maybe get a graduate degree. No. Look, I would say that the thing I appreciated most about here was I had a lot of opportunities, whether it was doing stuff here in the communication center, whether it was working in the office, whether it was being in the mask, whether it was being in Sigma Phi Lambda. Getting involved in as many ways as you can, you find that all those different experiences, and you and I were talking about earlier, relationships, it all builds, and it can only kind of benefit you. So, if I had any advice, it would be get involved, do something. I think the people that get the most out of their experience and find themselves better prepared at the end are the ones that you see were a little bit in everything all over the campus.
Wow, we really want to thank Steve Graham and Ray Netchie for a fantastic interview. It's always great to see LaSalle alums come back and kind of just explain their experience in the field, as we all hope that we can get there someday. But from here, we're going to go right into Eagles talk. I want to introduce my guests, Josh Abrams as well as Kyle McIntosh, talking a little draft coverage. But before then, It's someone's birthday. We want to do a nice shout out. So in three, guys, let's say, ready? 1, 2, 3. Happy birthday, Miss. Miss. I was gonna say Miss McIntosh. She's not my mom, but
Yeah. No, you guys can say.
no, sorry, that
We're
was
good.
That was
Happy
really
birthday.
bad. That was bad,
Did it.
folks. But all in all, really appreciate Miss McIntosh for tuning in, and maybe she can enjoy this little Eagles talk, right? So let's get right into it, guys. The draft took place last week, and it was in Philadelphia. First time in a while. Back in the day, they did say it was held here in Philly, but this was, the first time in a while after being held in New York for so long, and then last year moving away just because they moved the draft back a month. But it was a fun experience. Got to go down there, experience the first round. So getting right into it, guys, just talk a little about what your overall thoughts, of this draft in terms of who they were able to select. Obviously, we'll get down to the nitty-gritty of the players, but a guy like Joe Douglas coming in to help out Howie Roseman, coming from Baltimore. What did you see from their selections throughout the draft? Did you think they were positive?
I think they were very positive because it's pretty clear that we were trying to go for a defensive-heavy draft class. Obviously, we struggled last year on the defensive end, especially in the cornerback position, as all Eagles fans know too well. So I'm very happy with their picks. I said on the last time I was on here that you never know what's going to happen, and if you have positivity for your team, I think why not just be happy going with these picks.
And Kyle, I guess we can get, just a little more of your analysis of what you kind of wanted going in the draft. I know that you were a guy high on a wide receiver in that first round. You wanted a guy like Mike Williams. Obviously, they don't go that way. But overall, what did you think of their draft?
I got to say, of course, I've been talking every single time I've been on the desk about Mike Williams this, Mike Williams that. We didn't get him, but what we got was a good bunch of defenders, which honestly I think was even a better choice ultimately because we're going to have that coverage, defensive end, the cornerback position. Hopefully we'll have guys who can get the crucial stops and won't give up a lot of big plays on defense because that's what really killed us last year. It was we would get them, through third and short, sometimes fourth and short. Oh, would you look at that big play, they convert, and then they wind up carrying that momentum down the field, getting a touchdown. We can't have that anymore. We really got to make sure that we get the production out of our guys, Barnett, Douglas, and Jones, and just make sure that they're properly coaching. Jones is going to come off of his injury. Before he was a top 15 caliber player, so hopefully he can recover enough and actually be able to come out on the field and produce even 80 or 90% as much as he did before. We're going to have a great player there.
And Kyle just got right into it. So let's look at the Eagles' first-round draft pick at number 14. Now, this was the pick that we got in the Sam Bradford deal from the Minnesota Vikings. Definitely was great to see us be able to snag a defensive end. Derek Barnett, you see his 32 sacks. This is a guy from Tennessee. Actually was able to break the great Reggie White, obviously Eagle great, record for sacks at the School of Tennessee. And really from what you can see on tape, this guy just knows how to get to the quarterback, and he's also a really good run stopper as well. And Josh, speak about taking a defensive end there at the number 14 spot. Obviously, getting more pressure on the quarterback is something we desperately need, especially in this Jim Schwartz defense that relies on the wide nine, and definitely from what I saw on tape and what hopefully we'll see as the season gets underway, that he's a guy that can get to the quarterback.
Oh, absolutely. I think he's going to complement Fletcher Cox really well. I think a problem we had last season was that despite having Connor Barwin and I think Nigel Bradham, was he on the defensive line as well? I'm not entirely sure, but we need someone that can complement Fletcher Cox. We need someone that can kind of carry the weight of the load, for lack of a better word. Cox can't be doing all of this pass rushing by himself. So I think Derek Barnett is going to be a very good, I guess, a young caterpillar to Fletcher Cox.
Yeah, and then, Kyle, obviously we have a guy in Brandon Graham that we gave some money to over the last season there on the other side, on the defensive end side of the ball. And, Fletcher Cox is in the middle. Obviously you're going to try to get as much pressure as you can from that middle spot, but you need guys on the outside to get to the quarterback. And, obviously we saw now Connor Barwin getting let go this offseason, so he was just not able to get that pressure that we needed after kind of moving into this new 4-3 defense. So talk a little about what you hope that a Barnett can do, realistically in his rookie season.
Yeah, so the one thing about offensive lines is once you get that key and being able to say, oh, hey, we need to stop this guy in particular, and there's nobody else really rushing that line, that happened to Fletcher Cox, where, you know, he couldn't keep going, as Josh said. He can't constantly be applying all the pressure. We need weapons on the inside and outside to be able to mix it up and disrupt any offensive line formation they choose to take. So having great guys like Barnett come in, having them be able to be a weapon on one side, having Fletcher Cox in the middle, and just being able to split them up and be able to say, all right, are we stopping them? Are we focusing here? Just being able to close those gaps, we'll open up those gaps and then close them with our players. Of course, that's going to be really crucial, getting those sacks and getting that pressure, especially since we're not going to be running heavy blitz packages because we're still under the Jim Schwartz defense. If he can get what he wants working, that's going to be great because we'll have the coverage downfield, we have the coverage in the middle of the field, and we'll have a great defensive line. I'm pretty excited right now.
Yeah, and I think going into the next 2 picks, the Eagles staying on the defensive side of the ball, going back-to-back cornerbacks in the 2nd and 3rd round. And you see Sidney Jones there. This is a guy coming out of the school of Washington, really a touted cornerback, really one of the really highly rated cornerbacks coming into this draft. Unfortunately, suffering this injury that made him drop down to the 2nd round. Eagles, though, felt confident in him, think that they trust their doctors, think that, man, this guy can turn out to be a really great player for us down the line. I mean, obviously, unfortunately, Philly knows about waiting for players with the Sixers and other teams. And, I mean, I don't know if that's really worked out for the Sixers. Hopefully they have more success. But you see also a guy like Rasul Douglas. Now, this guy is healthy. West Virginia, this was a really deep draft class for defensive backs, 6'2", 209 pounds. This is a big-time player as well. I really enjoyed his story after watching him be interviewed at the NovaCare Complex, just talking about his upbringing and just the fact that he was just sleeping on the floor and didn't really know if he was going to make it, out and be able to stay in college. So maybe, Kyle, just talk a little about these cornerbacks in this last segment here on the Eagles talk here.
So yeah, I just know, Sidney Jones' injury was really tragic, and that could have potentially ruined what was going to be a great career. Luckily, like you said, our doctors saw through that, being able to say, hey, sure, he's injured right now. He's still going to be a weapon when he comes back. We'd be fools to give up on that. We didn't have to get him in the 1st round. He was able to drop down a little bit. We got Barnett, which was the guy we wanted to fill that Barwin's role. So yeah, Sidney Jones is going to come in after he's healthy. He's going to be able to fill all the needs. I feel like it's going to be pretty darn good this season for our corners.
Yeah, and I think that, all Eagles fans just want to see is this team to be good, right? I mean, if we can improve upon the 7-9 season we had a year ago, obviously it was Doug Peterson's first season as a head coach, and Carson Wentz hopefully comes into his sophomore season and doesn't have a slump like many quarterbacks do. But that's going to do it for Eagles Talk. I want to thank Kyle McIntosh for coming on and talking Eagles with us. Josh Abrams is going to stick around to talk Phillies, and we're going to welcome Alec Kostel in as well, so stay tuned.
For my next classes.
"31% of female victims stalked by an intimate partner were sexually assaulted by that partner. For more help, visit www.victimsofcrime.org.
3, 2, 1, action. You may think a guy would be producing this, but I can too. Anyone can find a cure.
Women are being downgraded for their physical ability, but you can be just as strong.
"20% of women are engineers, but it doesn't stop there.
I'm a tech girl. I'm a tech girl.
I am a tech girl.
I am a tech girl."
Talk Philadelphia. Well, the Philadelphia Phillies were on this great streak against the NL East, but unfortunately on a little road trip now playing the Dodgers and then the Chicago Cubs, struggles ensued, and we're seeing that right now. I want to welcome in our Phillies correspondent, Alec Kostel, and start with you. Just talk about what you've seen for them over the last week now. Obviously, after that 6-game winning streak, things kind of fell off just because, the teams they're playing now are top-level teams, obviously, playing Dodgers as well as the defending champs. What have you seen from them over the last stretch?
Well, I've seen trouble closing games. We've gotten leads in several of these games and we can't close. Against the Dodgers, of course, the terrible back-to-back-to-back. And what should have been an error in that bottom of the 9th inning, giving the game to the Dodgers on a silver platter. You can't do anything about that. And the Phillies are still trying to figure things out, but I don't think the record right now really reflects what this team is doing and what is capable of doing.
Yeah, and I mean, and to be frank, though, they're still in these games. It's very close. They're not losing games by a ton, which, I mean, lets you know that, I mean, their starters, for the most part, they still have some nice outings. Unfortunately, bullpen is giving up these games a lot of times. And look, they still don't have the offense they need. They're not going to always come up with those timely hits like they were coming up with those in those NL East series over the last couple weeks. But, Josh, talk about this team right now. I mean, is kind of following up, Alec, of what you've seen from them. Still early on in the year. We're just beginning May. A lot of time to go. I think we've seen some great things from them early on, but obviously struggles are going to happen.
Right. So when I look at this team, you look at when they started to fall in 2012. Some of these players that are on the team right now have been around since about maybe 2013, 2014. I think a really, really big positive spot right now is Cesar Hernandez. He is playing arguably at an all-star level right now, but there aren't enough positives to outweigh the negatives because I think Odubel Herrera and Maikel Franco are kind of playing at a very inconsistent level. You always see Odubel Herrera in the field making lackluster plays. He's not really living up to the potential that he did last year in the beginning, and I think it's a big problem because those two are going to have to be the cornerstones of this franchise if they want to start rising. And obviously the bullpen, you could talk about them forever about how struggle worthy they are. So, we have a long ways to go. Obviously we've shown that we can hang in there with anyone, but as Alex said earlier, closing out games is very, very, very troublesome for us.
Yeah, and I mean, let's just look at this. I mean, this road record right now for the Philadelphia Phillies this year. And I mean, look, 5-10, 232 batting average, 4.42 ERA. I mean, obviously, look, I mean, it's still early in the season. This is going to have to improve, though, Alec. I mean, they have to try to figure out how to come up with just better performances coming down at the end. And going into the season, I didn't think this bullpen was going to be this bad, but unfortunately, they're just giving up too many runs when we really needed to hold this lead.
Yeah, the bullpen on paper at the beginning of the year looked like we were going to be set. It looked like we were going to be ready for this season even better than last season where the bullpen did impress. But we've had troubles. The bullpen is still learning. A lot of them are young, and other guys who aren't young, they need to figure things out or they will have their numbers shipped out of here soon enough to Lehigh Valley. There's a lot of problems, especially on the road. Hitting-wise on the road, I'd say more. You looked at that, it was a 4.42 ERA, which isn't terrible, but still, it's the hitting numbers on the road that really need to start getting a move on.
Yeah, and you can see the bullpen issues right here. 253 batting average. You can see the save percentage there is through the roof. And so 20 home runs, most in major leagues. Josh, you want to say something on this?
I think to add on to this whole bullpen issue, as soon as Genmar Gomez started struggling in the beginning of the season, I think that kind of took a toll and kind of put everyone in a shock. Because Genmar Gomez was among the league leaders in saves for a while last year, and we thought, hey, this could be maybe this could be our next Brad Lidge. But then he started blowing saves earlier in the season, and now we don't really have a legit closer. We have Benoit and Hector Neris, who I'm not very happy with after that whole Dodgers game. But I think as soon as Genmar started to fall off, I think that's when we started to kind of panic in that area.
I'll give the last word to you, Alec. Where do you see this team going, I guess, in these next couple, finishing out these series on the road and going into the next ones and hopefully in this next couple weeks? Where do you think they have to improve upon?
Well, I think the Phillies have already rebounded from that Dodgers series. We saw them take the Cubs to a 10-2 victory, which is insane, in Wrigley against the defending World Series champions. Sure, we lost the next two, but we're fighting today and might get that win. So we have to see, and I think Maikel Franco's back up on the upswing. I think he's figuring things out, and we'll see a much better Phillies team for the rest of the season.
That's positives. I'd like to hear all these positives about the Philadelphia Phillies. Still lots of season to go as we get into the summer months. But that's going to do it for Phillies talk. Let's get right into Fast Five. I'm going to go back to the Philadelphia Eagles. I want to go to you, Josh. Draft grade. Give me a A through F. You can do A+, A-. I can do whatever you want. What do you give on, in terms of their overall draft, a grade? I know it's still early. We don't know what these players are going to turn out to be.
So because it's so early right now, we're not even close to preseason yet. I'm going to give them a B, maybe a B+, only because of you know, we don't know what Sidney Jones is going to do, how he's going to react to coming back from the injury. So, you know, like I said, you don't know what's going to happen. There's a lot of potential. So be positive, give him a B.
All right, going back to Phillies, let's go to Alec. I think Josh mentioned Cesar Hernandez a little bit. Who is your MVP or best player you've seen all season long for the Philadelphia Phillies as today, as we're still early in the season?
This might surprise you, but Aaron Altair. Nice. Aaron Altair is tearing it up right now. Sorry for the cliche, but he's hitting doubles left and right.
Yeah, and I think he's playing really well. And I'm going to go back to you for Eagles. Let's just quickly get through this Fast Five. What do you think over/under in terms of wins for these Eagles team? I know we asked this a lot, but this is the last show. Over/under 8 wins for the Eagles next season.
Well, now that the draft is over and we've stacked up on defensive players, I'm still going to go with my 9 wins.
All right, 9 wins. Back to Phillies. Let's go with. Let's talk about Franco. You mentioned him. Does he find this stretch, and does he hit over 25 home runs this season? Can he still get to that mark?
I definitely think he can. There was a great article in The Good Fight. I would highly suggest people reading that. It will cover up what Franco has been doing. I highly suggest reading that. It will give you the great details on that. I definitely think he will.
And following up with you, Josh, Eagles draft was it was in Philadelphia, right? First time in a while. And do you think that we showed our city well from what you could see on TV from the screen?
Absolutely. I think we had a very good turnout, and I think it shows how many people from around here, not just in the city of Philadelphia, but from around the tri-state area, how well interested we are.
Yeah, and it was definitely fun to be down in that atmosphere. It was hot, it was sweaty, but a lot of people, but it was definitely great to cheer on the Eagles' first selection. But that's going to do it here for Philly Sports Talk. I want to thank all my guests, Kyle McIntosh to come on Talk Eagles, Josh Abrams for coming on Talk Eagles, as well as Philly, and as always, Alec Kosfel for your great Phillies insight. Really appreciate it. You can check all this on LaSalle TV. It's our YouTube page. It's our Twitter account at Sports Talk LTV. This is our last show, folks, of the season. Really want to thank all of you for tuning in. It's been a great fun. See you around.